amazing revelation. How a simple greeting in Japanese transformed a billionaire's life forever. Jake Thompson felt like a ghost in the crowded conference hall, lurking in the shadows of the dazzling tech elite. His 30-year-old self, once bursting with ideas, now felt like a mere spectator, haunted by the success of friends-turned-rivals. As a struggling entrepreneur in the epicenter of Silicon Valley, he watched peers like Kyle and Avery soar to the dizzying heights of the tech industry, their wealth and influence piercing through his every doubt. Despite his relentless work ethic, his bank account told a grimmer tale: growing debt, mounting pressure, and a sense of inadequacy that clung to him like a thick fog. Everything changed when a simple greeting in Japanese slipped from his lips as he unwittingly approached Hiroshi Tanaka, the Billionaire CEO. The moment was surreal, tinged with excitement, but also fear. This was a titan whose mere presence commanded respect. Jake felt the thrill of a connection through shared heritage, however faint it was, but also the weight of his insecurities deepening. Was he really worthy of this encounter? As they exchanged stories late into the night, discussing their visions for technology, the initial spark of camaraderie quickly ignited a question. Could he become someone in this ruthless arena? However, hope was shadowed by a gnawing anxiety. Jake encountered invisible roadblocks everywhere he turned, subtle slights from investors who rarely took him seriously, a bias against someone who didn't fit their mold. Each dismissive glance made him question if talent alone could transcend the prejudice surrounding him. Hiroshi's faith in honesty and authenticity felt like a beacon. But how long could he maintain this integrity in an industry enamored with flash and empty promises? Fear clawed at his insides, threatening to topple his fragile resolve. What if he was meant to fail? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With the haunting specter of compromise looming large, Jake found himself on the edge of a decision that could either build him up or shatter what few remaining bonds he had. Sitting in a boardroom surrounded by his former colleagues, the tension was palpable, the air thick with unspoken animosities. As he prepared to confront their incompetence, a bead of sweat trickled down his back. What if he floundered? What if the whispers of judgment from the tech elite drowned out his truths? Just as his mind raced toward despair, a disruption rippled through the room. A bombshell revelation about Hiroshi, unraveling a connection he never anticipated. Family ties surfaced from the depths of his past, pregnant with history and unearthed wounds. The realization crushed his confidence. This was more than just a business evaluation. This was personal. It sent a tremor of fear coursing through him, his heart thudding at the thought of what this could mean. He stood, teetering on the precipice of revelation and stagnation, the weight of destiny heavy upon him. Would he unearth the courage to confront his struggle, or let it define him one last time? The room buzzed with anticipation, each breath an excruciating pause that threatened to echo the answer he both feared and craved. Jake's palms were clammy as he scanned the boardroom filled with familiar faces that now felt like a battleground. The revelation regarding Hiroshi wasn't just a twist of fate. It was a jolt to the very foundation of his intentions. Jake was unaccustomed to this feeling of vulnerability. He had spent years building a shield around himself, mastering the art of detachment to navigate the harsh realities of entrepreneurship. Yet here he stood, on the edge of a cliff, teetering between fear and opportunity. The silence weighed heavily as his colleagues turned their attention toward him, eyes glimmering with curiosity and skepticism alike. Jake felt the pressure pinching at his chest. Would he dare to harness the power of Hiroshi's legacy within this room? Could he transform his shared blood history with Hiroshi into a catalyst for transcending his limitations? As the silence stretched, an internal dialogue sparked within him, wrestling between his yearning for recognition and the fear of exposing his vulnerabilities. He adjusted his posture, standing tall against the tide of self-doubt. Reflecting on Hiroshi's insistence on authenticity, Jake realized it was time to shed the protective layers he had continually wrapped around himself. "I know that the dynamics between us have shifted," he began, his voice steady but tinged with an underlying intensity. "And while some of you gained opportunities through connections and stature, others, like me, have fought every inch for our place in this industry." His opening statement was met with mixed reactions. Some faces softened with understanding, while others stiffened defensively. Jake pressed on, determined to capitalize on the moment. "It's easy to dismiss those who don't fit your expectations. I've felt that sting." The moment hung treacherously, and he caught the glance of Kyle, seated across the table. A familiar flicker of pride and competition ignited in Kyle's expression. This challenge was not just against the board, it was against enmities often cloaked in camaraderie. Jake took a breath, letting the friction propel him forward. He had nothing to lose now. He had never been in this room with so much to gain. Hiroshi's presence loomed large in his mind, fueling his resolve. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that authenticity, real, palpable authenticity, cannot be feigned. I have ideas that can potentially elevate our business, but I need your support to dig deeper and understand what we can achieve together. The air crackled with anticipation. Would they reject him? Would they mock his ambition? Before he could dwell too long on the possibilities of failure, a surprising warmth cascaded over him. A wave of determination propelled by his desire to prove himself not just as an entrepreneur, but as someone worthy of his own identity. Suddenly, the boardroom door swung open, heralding the arrival of Hiroshi. The atmosphere shifted palpably, the murmurs hush as the room awaited his familiar voice. Jake felt adrenaline pulse through him. This was a crucial moment. As Hiroshi walked in with his regal presence, Jake felt compelled to assert himself even further. "We were just discussing the future," Jake said, his heart racing, "and how we can innovate our approach by utilizing authenticity as our greatest asset." Hiroshi paused, his eyes scanning the room, finally resting on Jake. There was an unspoken challenge brewing beneath the surface, and as Hiroshi's gaze locked onto him, Jake couldn't tell whether it was a signal for validation or the precursor to his undoing. Jake could feel the anticipation in the room shift to edge-of-the-seat tension. It was time for the truth to come to light. Would Hiroshi support this journey of uncovering hidden depths amid doubters and naysayers? The stakes couldn't have been higher, and he stood at the threshold of either judgment or redemption. "I know the stakes are high," Jake continued, emboldened. "But I am willing to lay everything on the line for this." Before Hiroshi could respond, Jake's bravado surprised even him, knitting together threads of courage forming a tapestry of opportunity and risk. As the billionaire opened his mouth, the room held its breath. What would Hiroshi say? Would this moment define Jake's new path, or would it spiral into chaos? The weight of the moment pressed heavily on Jake. He felt it crackle through the air. This was a decision point, one that could change everything. Hiroshi's gaze flickered between the faces in the room before settling back on Jake, a contemplative look washing over him. The silence felt eternal, a vacuum that magnified the thudding of Jake's heart. The implications of his words hung in the air, teetering between hope and despair. "Courage is commendable, Jake," Hiroshi finally said, his voice low yet commanding. "But courage without a clear vision leads to chaos." He leaned forward, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. "Tell me, what is this vision you speak of?" Jake's mind raced as he fought to articulate the precise concept that had sparked his excitement. His previous detached strategy felt foreign. He hadn't planned on laying out a roadmap. He needed to rely on instincts and emotions he rarely revealed. "What if we elevate our product line by intertwining authenticity at every level?" he began, glancing around to catch the varying degrees of interest among the board members. Not just the surface-facing authenticity that's easy to sell, but making it central to our branding, our partnerships, even our culture. He caught Kyle's expression again. This time, it was one of skepticism, eyebrows arched, as if daring him to delve deeper. Turning back to Hiroshi, he continued, "We have a unique opportunity to lead this industry in a way that resonates with consumers on a personal level, creating a genuine connection." Hiroshi nodded slightly, his expression inscrutable. "And how do we proceed from ideas to execution? What guarantees that this authenticity won't be perceived as just another marketing ploy?" Jake felt the heat of that question, the accusation lurking behind it. This was the moment Hiroshi had been waiting for, a chance for Jake to prove his mettle. "We must commit ourselves to transparency," he asserted, newfound confidence spilling into his voice. "We should involve our community in the decision-making process, invite feedback, and truly listen to what they want. Perhaps we can even bring in external voices to guide us, consultants who are experts in creating authentic brands." His words struck a chord with some of the board members, their faces beginning to show signs of consideration. But Kyle was still not convinced. "And at what cost?" he interjected sharply. "Bringing in outsiders means more than just financial expenditure. It means relinquishing control. Are you prepared to trust them with our vision?" Fight or flight rose within Jake. This wasn't the first time he had faced adversarial remarks, but somehow this felt more daunting. He inhaled deeply, the air thrumming around him. "Trust is the core of authenticity," he countered, his voice firm. "To innovate requires us to take risks, to shake off old habits and the fear of losing control in order to gain something invaluable." A murmur rippled through the board, and Jake took a step forward, emboldened. He was standing firmly on the precipice of his growth, and there was no turning back. "If we want to be seen as leaders, we need to embody what we preach. Let's start with small, actionable steps. I'm willing to spearhead an initiative that involves community input." The weight of Hiroshi's gaze bore down upon him, and Jake felt simultaneously empowered and precarious. Would this leap of faith within him be what ignited the revolution he longed for? His core sensed it might be the very catalyst needed, and despite the possible fallout, he had to trust the thought swirling through him. Hiroshi finally broke the silence. "If you truly believe this, I will support your attempt," he declared, the room still as everyone absorbed his words. "But know this, Jake, it is a high-risk endeavor." Relief mingled with trepidation within him, as anticipation crackled anew. But Hiroshi's approval also felt like a heavy mantle settled upon his shoulders, one that would call for decisive action. What had started as a moment of fear was transforming into a canvas where he could paint the colors of his new identity. "Let's make the right moves together," Jake asserted, determination flooding him as he sought to bring life to this raw ambition. The boardroom was still abuzz with the implications of this new direction, yet beneath it all lay a foundational fracture, evident in Kyle's intransigence. However, before he could revel in the slight victory, a sudden interruption stirred the atmosphere. The door opened again. This time, it was a woman Jake hadn't seen before, clutching a folder of documents who looked both flustered and urgent. "I'm sorry for the interruption, but I think you all need to see this immediately," she announced, urgency igniting curiosity in every gaze except Jake's. Something about her presence unsettled him. It felt like an omen, warning that the room's equilibrium was precarious. What could she possibly reveal to threaten this newfound direction? As Jake felt a familiar pulse of anxiety rise, he braced himself, waiting for the revelation to unfold before him. Would it reinforce his commitment to authenticity, or dissolve it? The commotion in the room shifted Jake's focus entirely. The woman's hurried entrance felt almost like a scene from a movie, one that would define the fate of this pivotal moment. She hesitated for a heartbeat, seeming taken aback by the attention, then thrust forward, her folder shaking slightly in her grasp. "Just after you all discussed the new direction, I received a troubling report," she said, her voice steady despite the anxiety radiating from her. "Social media is buzzing with rumors that one of our partnerships may be deceiving our consumers about authenticity." It hasn't been confirmed yet, but the implications are severe if it's true. A shadow of dread crossed Jake's face. This news could jeopardize everything he had just risked to advocate for. "What do you mean?" he managed to ask, an intrusive sense of panic fluttering in his chest. "It concerns our collaboration with the Greenway Collective," she clarified, her gaze piercing into Jake's. "They've been accused of falsely promoting environmentally sustainable practices that they don't actually adhere to. If consumers find out, it could damage our credibility, the very foundation of the authenticity we're aiming to establish." Jake's mind raced. He had to assess the situation quickly. The reality of his ideas was colliding violently with potential fallout. "Can we confirm this?" he demanded, his heart pounding more intensely now. The woman nodded, still scanning the reactions around her. "I've sent a team to investigate. But if we wait for confirmation, the damage will grow. We have to act quickly." Kyle, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, erupted into skepticism. "Great. Perfect timing. We've got a shaky vision and now this hits us? What's next? Flames and chaos." Jake straightened his spine, a mixture of fear and resilience steeping within him. "This is exactly why the path to transparency is vital," he replied, voice unwavering as he directed his focus back to Hiroshi and the board. "Discussing our challenges openly and addressing them head-on reinforces our dedication to authenticity. Maybe we can utilize this moment to show our consumers that we are committed to real solutions." At that moment, Hiroshi interjected, cutting through the tension. "We must be swift yet careful. Transparency without strategy can lead to panicking." "Jake," he said, signaling a shift toward him. "What do you propose?" Jake's mind was still spinning, but clarity emerged amidst the chaos. There was a way to transform this crisis into an opportunity to showcase the core values he had just advocated for. "Let's set up a meeting with the Greenway Collective, address the allegations directly, and determine our next steps. We can also prepare a public statement regarding our commitment to responsible practices." Hiroshi leaned back, considering Jake's suggestion, while all eyes in the room felt heavy with anticipation. Jake could feel the weight of their expectations. Every fiber of his being wanted to convince them that his vision wasn't just a dream. It could indeed become a practical identity for them if he executed it with their trust intact. But if they're guilty? Kyle's voice dripped with doubt. "We're not just putting ourselves on the line here. It could ruin everything." Jake felt a tension knotting in his stomach. This was the moment he had to confront his fears head-on. "Then we own it," he declared, surprising even himself with the conviction in his tone. "If they are misleading consumers, we distance ourselves. But before we leap, we owe it to our stakeholders to gather facts. That's the foundation of trust we want." Silencing murmurs erupted again, with varying eyes of surprise and intrigue directed at him. Each moment told him this was his chance. This crisis was a gauntlet thrown at his feet. Was he really ready to delve into the heart of this menace, or was it too soon to untangle such an intricate web? His thoughts swirled, but he felt alive, invigorated by the challenge. The projector now shone brightly, illuminating the potential pathways laid ahead. As he looked around, determination settled in like a warm blanket of purpose. "Let's do it," Hiroshi said again, offering a slight nod, allowing Jake a sliver of hope. This could redefine us. Before Jake could savor this fragile victory, an undeniable weight still loomed. The storm had yet to unfold, and the questions simmered still. Who could he trust? And were they even ready for the repercussions of this journey? As the group began discussing logistics, Jake allowed himself a flicker of optimism, but in the back of his mind, a pressing question gnawed at him. What truths awaited him in this collaboration, and would facing them empower his vision or unravel his commitment to authenticity entirely? The stakes were rising higher, and clarity wasn't just a distant goal. It was also a haunting precipice. The meeting room buzzed with a mixture of anxiety and anticipation, but Jake felt a different kind of energy coursing through him. This was his moment, his chance to reshape the narrative not only for the company, but also for himself. He focused on the practical steps ahead, pushing aside the gnawing uncertainty about the partnership with the Greenway Collective. The clarity of purpose ignited something within him, a burgeoning confidence that overcame his doubts. "Let's prioritize the investigation," he directed, shaking off the last remnants of vulnerability. "Our first step should be a communication plan. We need a clear message outlining our values and our dedication to genuine sustainability." Kyle shifted uneasily, his skepticism evident. "And what if it turns out we've been duped? What then? Our credibility hangs by a thread." Jake squared his shoulders, projecting conviction into his words. "Exactly. If we do discover wrongdoing, we must take a stand. It's a chance to redefine integrity in our business model. Authenticity isn't merely a marketing strategy, it's foundational to what we do. It's time we let our actions speak louder than words." Hiroshi nodded, impressed by Jake's resolve. "This is a pivotal moment for leadership. We need a united front. Let's assign team members to collaborate with the investigation crew and prepare that public statement." As the team discussed tactics, Jake felt a growing sense of responsibility. People were looking to him for guidance. His opinions held weight. It was a daunting realization, yet empowering. He had always been comfortable on the sidelines, analyzing data and strategizing. Now he was on the field, anticipated to play a lead role. His team divided up responsibilities, and the realization struck him. Leading meant more than just steering discussions. It involved making difficult choices, standing firm in convictions, and dealing with consequences that could ripple through every level of the organization. He would have to challenge the comfort of complacency that so often permeated their decision-making process. After the meeting, Jake found himself staring out the window, contemplating the storm brewing outside, a perfect metaphor for his current internal tempest. He was stepping into unknown territory, bringing to the forefront the very ideals that had shaped his vision. But with every step came an echo of doubt. Could he handle the fallout if things went awry? Suddenly, the chime of his phone jolted him from his thoughts. A notification flashed across the screen, an urgent message from the investigative team. He opened it, his heart racing. "We've gathered preliminary evidence. We need you to come by the office ASAP." Panic mixed with adrenaline. This was it, the moment that could shatter his newfound confidence or cement it. The investigation held the potential for disaster, yet it was also a crucible for his personal growth. Jake understood this was a chance to lead with authenticity, to merge his ideals into concrete actions, and ultimately define who he was in this landscape of uncertainty. Jake's pulse quickened as he made his way to the office. He would have to confront the truth, dissect its implications, and prepare for the fallout. He could no longer stand by as an observer. This was his crucible. The time had come to face the music and uncover the reality behind the deceptive facade. What he didn't know was that the evidence gathered could not only challenge his values, but also unravel secrets about the very foundation of the partnership. As he stepped into the conference room, an aura of dread cloaked him. What awaited him could very well dictate his future and the vision he had been so fervently championing. Would he emerge triumphant? Or would this revelation leave him stripped of everything he believed? Jake entered the office, the air thick with tension and uncertainty. He took a moment to scan the room, the faces of his team members reflecting a mix of concern and curiosity. The clock on the wall ticked ominously, each second amplifying the gravity of the situation. Their eyes were on him, searching for leadership, assurance, anything that might quell their unease. "Thank you all for gathering on such short notice," he began, his voice surprisingly steady, despite the flutter of panic in his stomach. "I know the news we're about to discuss could shake our foundation, but it's crucial we face this head-on." As he spoke, Jake couldn't escape the gnawing thought. What if his bold stance had been misguided? What if he was leading them into uncharted waters that spelled disaster? Each word he uttered carried the weight of responsibility, reinforcing the realization that leadership required more than vision. It demanded courage. The head investigator, Sasha, stepped forward, flipping open a laptop and projecting the preliminary findings onto the screen. Jake determined to keep his posture strong, despite the unsettling images that flickered alongside the data. He focused on the facts, remembering his purpose. "What you see here are some transaction records between us and Greenway," Sasha explained, motioning to the screens. "They're selling products that don't align with the sustainability claims made in our partnership. Initial analysis shows several discrepancies." Jake's heart raced. This wasn't just a partnership at risk. This was a betrayal of their values. He fought hard against the tide of dread creeping up his spine. This is troubling. We need to ensure our messaging not only reflects our commitment, but holds those accountable for any misleading practices. As the discussion progressed, Jake pushed past the uncomfortable weight of doubt, knowing that this moment would either galvanize them or tear them apart. Their responses to the evidence began to shape the narrative, a testament to their collective resilience. "You were right," Kyle chimed in, each word gradually stripping away his earlier skepticism. "We have to pivot this into an opportunity to show the industry how proactive we can be. If we handle this correctly, we can emerge stronger." For the first time that day, Jake felt the beginnings of a shift in momentum. Here lay a chance to redefine their position, not only to the public, but within themselves. In that moment, something essential clicked in Jake's mind. Leadership wasn't just about stability. It was about harnessing the emotions of others and uniting them around a common purpose. "Exactly. We can lead by example," Jake replied, flipping the narrative as he directed his gaze toward the team. "Transparency is our ally. We must prepare a statement to publicly address these issues while emphasizing our commitment to integrity." Predictably, discussions veered into tactics, logistics, and public relations strategies. Jake felt a surge of adrenaline. He was no longer merely reacting. He was actively shaping the course, melding his vision with the needs of his colleagues. They bounced ideas back and forth, crafting a plan that melded multiple perspectives into a unified front. Just as the excitement reached a crescendo, a lingering thought clawed at Jake's mind. What if they lifted the veil only to find deeper, more incriminating truths lurking beneath? What would that mean for him, for the team? The prospect of an even darker revelation hung like an ominous shadow. Jake took a deep breath, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. This was his moment, a test of character, the ultimate trial that would either solidify his place as a leader or expose his vulnerabilities in a glorious unraveling. As the meeting wrapped up, a creeping sense of anticipation mingled with uncertainty. Their strategy was taking shape, but the weight of truth felt heavier than before. Jake dismissed the meeting with a group nod, but as he turned away, a notification pinged on his phone, a message from an anonymous source. "I know the truth about Greenway. Meet me tonight, or you'll regret it." In an instant, everything shifted. This was no longer merely an organizational crisis. It was personal, and the stakes had just risen significantly. Would he uncover a truth that could ultimately define his journey or destroy everything he had worked for? Jake's pulse quickened as he stared at the notification. The weight of the message pressed heavily on his chest. What did this anonymous source know, and why were they reaching out to him? He had become accustomed to navigating uncertainty in business, but this felt different, a testing ground for his integrity and resolve. The team had rallied around him, and for the first time, he felt a semblance of control. Yet here was a wild card that could either solidify their collective efforts or unravel everything he'd worked to build. He could play it safe, ignore the message entirely, but something deeper within him urged him to confront it. How did he expect to lead if he couldn't face his fears head-on? He spent the remainder of the afternoon in a daze, the strategies discussed in the meeting swirling alongside the ominous implication of the text. Each time he glanced at his phone, the pulse of anxiety refueled his doubts. He found himself wandering through memories of his formative years. Those early days when each decision felt monumental, shaping the leader he aspired to become. Back then, he uncovered a hidden capacity for resilience, yet this situation required something beyond mere resilience. It demanded astuteness, a strategic approach to an unexpected threat. As evening approached, Jake made a decision. He would meet the anonymous source, not only to uncover what they knew, but to dismantle any lingering fears that could paralyze him. He stepped into his car, turning the engine over while mentally rehearsing his approach. This wasn't simply about gathering information. It was about taking ownership of the narrative and proving to himself that he could handle whatever emerged from this encounter. Navigating through the city, Jake wrestled with a cocktail of anticipation and dread. What if the revelation was damning? Would it expose him as a failure or an unwilling accomplice in a corporate deception? And yet, he felt an undercurrent of determination. The drive to act was stronger than the fear that threatened to immobilize him. He arrived at the dimly lit cafe where they had agreed to meet. Low-hanging lights created shadows, and the faint hum of ambient chatter provided a strange comfort. As he pushed open the door, he felt the tension coil tighter in his stomach. The anonymity of the encounter felt like a shroud, heightening the stakes of this meeting. A figure sat at the far corner, their features obscured by the dark. Jake approached cautiously, adrenaline coursing through him. "Are you the one who texted me?" he asked, warily eyeing the individual. "Yes," the figure responded, voice low and steady. "And trust me, you need to hear what I have to say about Greenway." As they began to talk, Jake quickly realized he was not merely listening for insights. He was entering a conversation that could shift his life's trajectory. Each word exchanged unfolded layers of complexity in the crisis ahead. As the figure unfolded a detailed web of connections, Jake felt a rush of clarity. This was not just a professional challenge. It was a turning point. The words, peppered with urgency, ignited a fierce sense of responsibility within him. He understood then that leadership was not static, but a dynamic interplay of decisions fueled by insight, courage, and a willingness to confront hard truths. What followed next would either illuminate his path or plunge him deeper into darkness. With every syllable spoken, the gravity of his choices became starkly apparent, and Jake could feel the revelation approaching, a moment that could irrevocably shape not just his success, but the ethical compass of his leadership journey. As the conversation unfolded, a final statement from the figure hung in the air like a specter. "You need to act fast. They're planning to cover this up, and they will stop at nothing to protect themselves." Jake's resolve solidified. This was the moment he had been preparing for all along, and he realized the stakes had become more personal than ever. Would he truly confront this reality, risking everything he had built, or would he retreat into the familiar shadows of doubt? The decision loomed before him, dark and stark, and as he steeled himself for the impending conflict, he knew one thing. Whatever happened next would define not just his career, but the very essence of who he was becoming. Jake's mind raced as he processed the implications of the figure's warning. The cafe around him blurred into a backdrop, an indistinct world contrasting with the sharp clarity of the choices confronting him. He felt an undeniable shift within himself, a blossoming realization that this moment was more than just a meeting. It was a crucible, testing not only his professional acumen, but also the ethical core of his existence. "Who are they?" he pressed, seeking to understand the forces he was up against. As the figure provided names and connections, Jake recognized patterns of behavior and decision-making that echoed the same corporate culture he had grown weary of in his own company. "Corruption runs deep," the figure said, each word laced with bitterness. "Your boss knows the stakes and is willing to silence anyone who threatens the status quo." Jake's gut churned. He had always prided himself on being a man of integrity, but the tide of fear and doubt that swept over him suggested he might have underestimated the wolves he was working with. The figure leaned closer, whispering, "This isn't just about money. It's about lives. People have suffered, and they'll continue to suffer if you don't act." Jake felt a potent mix of anger and clarity surge through him. He had dedicated his career to improving the business landscape, Yet here he was, confronting a reality that stained everything he had contributed to. Was he too late to change the course? "What do you want from me?" Jake asked, scanning the figure's expression, searching for any hint of ulterior motives. "I need you to listen, and to do something," the figure urged, breaking eye contact for a moment. Their insecurity was palpable, and Jake couldn't ignore the shared humanity that lingered beneath the fear. This was someone with a conscience, someone who believed in a cause worth fighting for. Jake inhaled deeply. The crystallizing thought sparked a flame within him, a conviction he hadn't felt in years. It was clear. His path was not merely set to expand a business, but to lead a crusade against ethical failures choking the corporate sector. "I'll need proof," Jake declared, feeling the rush of adrenaline flooding his system. "I won't act without knowing for sure what I'm up against." The figure nodded, relief washing over their features as they slid a file across the table. "This outlines everything you need. If you decide to go public, you'll need to be meticulous. Choose your allies wisely. Not everyone will support you." As Jake examined the contents, his mind reeled with possibilities and repercussions. Each piece of evidence pointed to systematic attempts to cover up misdeeds that directly affected not just stakeholders, but employees, families, and communities. The reflection of those faces haunted him, igniting a fire beneath his resolve. "Thanks," he said finally, looking up, determination racing through his veins. "I have to think this through, but I will act." With that proclamation, a weight lifted off his shoulders. In recognizing the gravity of his potential impact, Jake felt an inkling of the leader he needed to become. He needed to communicate with his team, to harness this incipient urgency into a plan with ethical consideration at its heart. Outside, the night air was cool and brisk as Jake stepped into the street. He felt electric, each step resonating with purpose. He could no longer afford to be a passive observer. Decisions must be made, alliances forged, and truths confronted. Time was not on his side, and the walls around him seemed to close in. Would his next move strengthen him, or could they expose him to dangers he had not foreseen? With every passing second, the stakes escalated, and the clock was ticking. As he returned to his car, he felt he was no longer the same man who had stepped in searching for answers. He was transforming, compelled to act for a cause far bigger than himself. The moment was upon him. A decision awaited, and for the first time, uncertainty morphed into an exhilarating challenge. Success was within reach, but so was failure. Would his resolve be enough to change the course of their destinies? Driven by newfound clarity, Jake tightened his grip on the steering wheel, the map of his next steps forming in his mind. The journey ahead promised risks and revelations that would either solidify his growth or unravel everything he had just begun to rebuild. He was ready to embrace whatever came next. But as he drove into the night, another nagging question persisted. What would he discover within himself when confronted by the stark truth? As Jake navigated the darkened streets, each turn resonated with the weight of his choices. The file lay beside him, a harbinger of truths he had never dared to confront before. He recalled the figure's warning reverberating in his mind, a dark echo urging him to act, to bring light to the shadows that clouded his workplace. At a traffic light, he paused, grappling with the gravity of the task ahead. What was to be uncovered extended beyond himself. It was a severing of the corporate veil obscuring the darker realities of the world he had chosen to inhabit. Was he equipped to face the complicated web of deceit? Rubbing his temples, Jake reflected on the stakes. Trust was a commodity he had almost forgotten in the relentless climb of capitalism, where profit was king. Yet now, as he considered the faces of those affected by the corruption, he felt a growing urgency, a responsibility that weighed heavily. He owed it to them to dismantle the barriers shrouding the truth. Arriving at home, he flicked on the lights, illuminating the familiar yet distant surroundings. He felt as if he were a ghost drifting through a home that now felt utterly foreign. Memories of late-night work sessions and quiet contemplation hung in the air. Pacing through each room, Jake felt the intensity of his transformation seeping into his very bones. He stepped into his office, its walls lined with accolades and framed achievements, symbols of a career that had once filled him with pride. It now appeared to him as a testament to complacency. Would he allow these accolades to represent a life of dishonesty? Or would he emerge as a beacon of hope amidst malevolent waves? As the unease clawed at him, he booted up his laptop, eager to dissect the contents of the file. Scanning the documents, Jake's heart raced with each revelation. His analytical mind began connecting dots, revealing the insidious nature of the corruption. Names, dates, transactions, they painted a clearer picture that could devastate lives and reshape the industry. But his initial surge of adrenaline shifted into a contemplative caution. He knew he must tread carefully. How could he present this to his colleagues without igniting chaos? Anger flared in him at the thought of betrayal, and yet the instinct for caution lingered, urging him to prepare meticulously. It was in this moment of reflection, as he mulled over his next steps, that Jake recognized something within himself, a tenacity he had long buried beneath layers of expectation. He was no longer merely an employee. He was becoming an agent of change. His confidence blossomed, knitting together threads of motivation and resolve into a singular fabric of his being. To proceed, Jake realized, he needed to establish trust with his colleagues first, to cultivate a network of alliances that could withstand the storm of dissent. Yet, who could he truly rely on? Could he trust those who wore the same masks he had become so adept at spotting? Images of his team flooded his mind. Sarah, the ambitious analyst. What would she risk to support integrity over profit? Barry, the seasoned manager. Could he be swayed to confront the deeply ingrained conformism? Each potential ally stirred both hope and uncertainty within him, akin to traversing a minefield. He sat back down at his desk, fingers poised over the keyboard, hesitating. Could he articulate his motivations and evoke courage in them to confront their own ethical dilemmas? Fear and doubt still loomed over him, yet desperation for change burned stronger. Jake reached for his phone, tapping the numbers of Sarah and Barry, knowing these calls could either be his catalyst or his undoing. He held his breath as the calls began to ring, caught between optimism and dread. Was he strong enough to ignite their convictions? Or would the very action of reaching out expose him to unanticipated risks? An unexpected twist awaited him on the line. As Jake sat at his desk, the glow of the lamp illuminating the surrounding darkness, he felt a rush of determination surge through him. He had come too far, grown too much, to retreat back into the shadows now. Each call he made to Sarah and Barry wasn't just a step forward. It was a testament to his transformation. A declaration that he refused to be a passive participant any longer. When Sarah picked up, her voice conveyed both confusion and curiosity. "Jake, is everything okay?" "We need to talk," he replied, his tone serious. "I have something important to discuss, something that could affect all of us. Can we meet?" As he explained the urgency to Barry, he sensed both apprehension and intrigue on the other end of the line. It was as if he were sharing a secret mission, and the idea thrilled him. His colleagues were waking up to the notion that they had the power to change their reality. That night, the three gathered in a secluded corner of a local cafe, tensions running high. Jake laid the contents of the file before them, the weight of his findings palpable in the air. He recounted the anonymous warning, intertwining his narrative of the burdens of inauthenticity he had witnessed in their workplace. "What you see here are not just numbers and documents," he implored, empathy radiating from his voice. "These are people's lives. We have a chance to right wrongs and set a new course for who we are as a company." Sarah leaned closer, her hazel eyes scanning the pages, each revelation fueling her resolve. "This is worse than I imagined," she murmured, her hand trembling slightly as she pointed at a particular transaction. "How do we initiate this conversation with the others? What if they push back?" Jake took a deep breath, their shared passion igniting a spark of confidence within him. This isn't just about one person, it's about our legacy. If we don't take action, we become complicit in these practices, he replied, locking eyes with both of them. He could see his leadership rolling into place, vibrant with purpose and collective empowerment. Barry, usually stoic, nodded slowly, a look of dawning determination on his face. All right, we take this head on. I'll help talk to the management about scheduling a meeting. We can't let fear dictate our values. Each voice around the table contributed to a unified resolve that Jake had never experienced before. They were allies, united behind a common cause, a movement towards transparency and integrity. The feeling of solidarity was exhilarating. For the first time, Jake realized that he was not just advocating for himself, but a new chapter for the entire company. As they worked late into the night, formulating strategies and preparing to confront their leadership, Jake felt himself bloom from the emerging growth he had fostered within. When the day of the meeting arrived, the atmosphere buzzed with tension. Jake stood at the forefront of the gathering, flanked by Sarah and Barry, each representing the transformative power of collective courage. As they shared their findings, the weight of the truth colliding with the air in the room pressed down, yet Jake experienced an unexpected calm. We've built our reputation around authenticity, yet our actions betray our words, he stated, captivating the attention of the executives. By taking accountability, we diffuse ongoing issues and redefine who we are to our consumers. We must not only acknowledge these failures, but also rectify them. As words flowed, support swelled around him. Not an echo of doubters, but a chorus of affirmation. When Kyle, earlier skeptical, stood to back him, Jake sensed the tides turning, the rare sunlight cutting through the clouds of doubt. From that pivotal moment, everything changed. Executives hastily organized a committee to oversee the investigations, driven not merely by compliance, but by the evident fear of losing their authenticity in a world that thrived on transparency. Days turned into weeks, and the ripples of their actions began to reshape the culture of the company. Jake found himself recognized for his leadership in steering the organization towards a brighter vision, his once questionable role now embraced with respect from his peers. No longer was he viewed as a ghost, hovering aimlessly in the shadows. He had emerged as a leader. With every step forward, his self-confidence solidified, and the groundwork he laid transformed him into a respected figure within the tech community. Jake demonstrated integrity, not only through his recommendations, but also through actionable, transparent policies that embedded authenticity into every layer of the organization's framework. At an industry conference months later, he found himself on stage, the spotlight illuminating his newly refined purpose. As he concluded his talk on leading with authenticity, applause erupted, not just for the content, but for the remarkable journey embedded within each word. As he stepped down, he felt a wave of satisfaction wash over him. He had harnessed the lessons hidden within struggle, transforming doubt into conviction and conflict into opportunity. Jake Thompson, once a mere observer in the corporate realm, had achieved something profound. He became a leader, a voice for integrity. He reflected on how far he'd come, realizing he had not only elevated himself, but also uplifted those around him. Authenticity and courage no longer felt like distant ideals. They were woven into the very fabric of who he had become, a lasting legacy of his journey. Now, more than ever, Jake understood that true success thrives at the intersection of personal growth and collective intentions, beckoning others towards the promise of authenticity. This was his moment of triumph, and he cherished it completely. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment their reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.